Hey, everybody. As recruiters, we all know that hiring can be one of the most challenging parts of running a business. Whether you're a startup looking to build a dream team or a well established company aiming to streamline your recruitment process, the right tools make all the difference. TeamTailor is powerful all in one recruitment software your candidates and team will love. It's not just a piece of software, it's a way of working. With TeamTailor, you get everything you need in one place: powerful analytics, an AI assistant, customizable workflows, powerful integrations, and more. Plus, TeamTailor is easy to use and implement. You can onboard hiring managers with minimal training and get started right away thanks to an easy implementation and an intuitive, user friendly interface. 94% of users report better team collaboration, and 97% see an increase in qualified candidates. 89% of customers say their hiring process is faster. And if you're focused on the candidate experience, TeamTailor's candidate experience is at the heart of the ATS. Just ask any of the 4 million candidates who connect with customers every month. Join the ranks of over 125,000 recruiters and more than 8,500 companies like Oatly, Porsche, OneFlow, and Solo Stove who have transformed their recruitment with TeamTailor. Discover the new way to attract and hire top talent and see the results for yourself. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. You're here with Andrew Lewis. Andrew is an 8-year recruitment vet who has done everything from building a 2 million staffing agency to leading talent acquisition operations at startups and everything in between. He currently leads the talent function at a B2B ClimateTech company called Worldly and is the founder of the Talent Operator newsletter. Andrew, great to have you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Where are you based and what are you working on? Tell us more about the Talent Operator Network.
Yeah, so I'm based here in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. We'll say Phoenix just as the metropolitan area. I'm in a suburb called Mesa, more on the east side. But yeah, so what I'm currently working on, as you alluded to in the introduction, I'm currently running talent acquisition at Worldly, and I'm also building out and launching a newsletter called Talent Operator, which is essentially a resource for those recruiters and TA professionals who are in the weeds and, building something every day. And essentially what I wanted to do is create the resource that I wish I had, earlier on in my career where, I could just tap into someone's accrued knowledge, right? And just hear about, frameworks, mindsets, strategies, tactics, even, get recommendations on learning materials and other coursework and things that would be relevant to my career growth. So that is launching this week, actually. And so, yeah, anybody that's interested, I recommend that you check it out.
Awesome. I'll throw the link in the show notes, but really appreciate what you do and how you show up for the community. I think you and I connected on LinkedIn and a year or two back. It's been an interesting time where I feel like a lot of folks that have come up in TA and recruiting and HR in our generation, we've been pretty heads down in the startup space. We haven't had a lot of time for networking, haven't had a lot of time for conferences. Obviously, the pandemic threw a wrench in that. So, it's great to make a fast friendship and actually jam live. But tell me a little bit about how you approach networking and what gave you this energy to put something out there that's kind of open sourced and of altruism.
Yeah, I think the journey didn't start that way. I didn't necessarily start by saying I want to, help all of my talent acquisition professionals. I started posting pretty regularly on LinkedIn, and I'd say about exactly 2 years ago, maybe just a little bit more. And I actually shared a post about this the other day. I actually started it as a case study. I wanted to make myself a case study to basically see what is the impact going to have if I build a personal brand. What is that going to look like, in our recruiting and hiring process? How is that going to positively, impact the process, or is it not going to do anything? Is it not going to move the needle? So that was kind of my initial interest point, is just to kind of create this case study and basically just better understand the power of social media and the impact that it creates within recruiting and hiring. Over the 2-year period, that's evolved quite a bit. And I feel like where I've really found a lane and a passion is providing insights, providing resources, providing thoughts. Some of the stuff I share on LinkedIn is tried and true, and it's stuff I'm doing daily. Some of it's a little bit more idealistic and a little bit more strategic, and some of it is just encouragement and trying to help recruiters and TA professionals keep the right perspective. But I have found that that's probably where I get the most joy and the most contentment, is speaking to the talent audience, especially in this last year and a half, 2 years, when it's been incredibly brutal. I mean, realistically, the last 4 years have been really brutal for the talent space. But more specifically, the last couple of years. So just being able to be that voice who's still speaking positively about talent acquisition and still, giving people something to think about and to work on, even if, they're in the midst of kind of a turbulent ride.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because like a lot of people talk about falling into recruitment. Take that term as you will. I think like ultimately HR and recruitment has a pretty like low barrier to entry. You don't need a ton of qualifications. There's not a lot of prestige bias that goes into being a successful recruiter. When I think about the folks that have gotten into recruiting in the last few years, it's been a crazy time. So baptism by fire for sure. I think quality recruiters will rise to the top and persevere through this moment of adversity. And a lot of folks that got into recruiting are going to get out of recruiting, or maybe they already have. And I think that's a healthy culling of the industry. That churn is to be expected of any field. And ultimately, it's going to put quality recruiters like yourself in positions of leadership and in positions of influence to support the organizations, but also advance the field. Yeah. And like, I've got a lot of empathy for anybody that's gone through a layoff. I've navigated rifts myself. I work in startups in a variety of different capacities. So it's like at the end of the day, we're working ourselves out of a job. But it can be a little isolating at times when you're like recruiting a team of one. So hearing that you're creating these resources for other folks, I'm optimistic. I know you're an optimistic guy. And I think what you are putting out there ultimately is going to support folks that are junior in their recruiting journey, that are willing to hold on, go through this moment of adversity, and come out the other side with a skill set that is going to be undeniably valuable in the community.
Yeah. Yeah. I think...
What are your thoughts on like...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think the positive mindset and the perspective is important, but I also think we have to balance it with realism as well, and the understanding that you and I talk about this a lot, offline and in our own posts. Technology is evolving quicker than we've ever seen it, right? And there's no doubt it's going to impact the talent acquisition space and the recruitment space. And so while I want to make sure that, we keep the right mindset and we stay positive, we also need to be investing in the development of those skills, right? And understanding, this is why in my content, you see that I preach, we need to be ultimately knowing what value we provide to the business. Because at the end of the day, if we're just pushing process, if we're just, following a linear workflow in everything we do, and we're not a dynamic player on the team, we're not bringing true advisorship and true expertise to the team, that just puts you in a position of risk. And I think it's going to continue to put people at risk. And to your point, I mean, yes, there's that natural churn that happens in the industry, especially an industry like talent acquisition that's grown so much over the last like 10, 15 years. But I also think that technology is going to, potentially even impact that even more. And we might even see additional churn just from, the nature of technology coming in and automating so much and, making things simpler, faster, cheaper. So we have to know, where can we provide value and what is our role in this? How do we stay a valuable asset to the team despite all of this evolution and all these changes?
You've been on both sides, like in-house and agency. Talk about your entrepreneurship journey and how that influences your outlook as a business advisor now being back in-house.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, as someone who's spent, time both on the agency side and not just in the early part of my career, I kind of bounced back and forth for a few years there. And somebody who's also, been in a unique position to build kind of a brand from the ground up, maybe not a full brand, but a franchise brand from the ground up. It's really given me perspective to look at recruitment through different lenses, right? It doesn't always look the same in every industry. tech, which is where I am now and where I've been the last few years, looks a lot different than when I was, you know, running a full service desk and we were doing, staffing customer success or customer support roles and light industrial roles and things like that. There's different strategies, there's different perspectives that even hiring managers and organizations have when you're hiring different levels of talent. So I think it really created kind of this unique perspective. I'm not somebody who has followed this traditional career path, from agency to in-house, or somebody that started in HR and then worked their way to talent acquisition. I feel like I have a pretty diverse worldview when it comes to recruitment. And that's really just how I like to operate as someone who's leading talent acquisition. That even expands into the perspective of, I don't like to just learn from other talent acquisition professionals. I want to learn from top salespeople. I want to learn from top marketers. I want to learn from engineers. I want to learn from anybody. And maybe there's not any crossover to what they're doing and what I'm doing, but chances are there's a nugget that I can, pick from what they're telling me, or what they're doing, what they're building, how they operate, that I can, apply to what I'm doing. And even if it's just a framework or a way of thinking about a problem. And I don't know a lot of recruiters and talent operators that think that way. And I think they should. I think we should be studying people in different, that are successful across different areas of the business, because, we tend to, in talent acquisition, we tend to silo ourselves and we tend to kind of set up these processes and these workflows, and we don't veer from them. We're not creative. We're not, trying new things. And I think having that mindset and taking those learnings and applying them is really where you can really set yourself apart and create a unique perspective.
I agree. The idea of a talent partner as operator is core to how I approach placing a role. And when you apply like first principles thinking, like, what are we here to do as recruiters? We're here to broker an introduction and have a conversion for employment. And that employment in the future of work can look different ways. It can be 1099, W-2, whatever. At the end of the day, we're here to broker that introduction, influence human behavior, and have a conversion moment. I think we can get into the whole post-hire outcome and being people operators that are focused on like retention and development. That's all the fun stuff. I think ultimately that's the difference of being in-house, is you get to have that reward of being a part of the team you build. I'm biased that I've only worked for small companies or hyper growth companies where it is having such a large influence on the entire process. But that's one thing I'm continually learning, is folks from larger organizations that are, cogs in a machine, if you will, that are just playing a simple, small process in an entire ecosystem's hiring function.
Yeah.
And it looks different in engineering than it does in go-to-market. In terms of like the roles that you place, how do you think about like those differences of technical versus non-technical candidates in automation and workflows? Like, are you hands-on in the rec ops side of things, or are you more focused on that brand building in terms of how you think about what it takes to have that first principles thinking in hiring?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's a little bit of both. I wouldn't say that I have the bandwidth to be full on in rec ops and full on, in employer branding. Obviously, what I'm doing in the activity through LinkedIn is hopefully contributing to employer branding in a positive way. I'm a strong believer in, people follow people, and people want to engage and connect with people. And so I think there's a way to inadvertently attract people to your brand through you, even if you're not talking about service offerings or the industry or product offerings or anything like that. So that's always been kind of the ethos that I've had behind the style of content that I create. On the rec ops side, I mean, I think I'm a one-man team, so I have to be the rec ops person. And what I have found is, you have to kind of start, especially when you're, joining an organization. Like when I joined Worldly, we didn't have a talent acquisition function. And so you have to crawl before you can walk. And, the first couple years was really just focused on implementing an actual ATS. What does that look like? Providing trainings and resources and learning decks for hiring managers, walking people through, and showing people how to succeed and how to use the ATS to its full capacity. setting up a metrics dashboard, and it's not anything crazy. It's just the stuff that is going to directly impact the success of the business. But just kind of putting those principles into place for the first time. Now we're entering a phase where we're a little bit more mature, and we're bringing on a new ATS that has a little bit more capability and it's a little more dynamic. So my perspective is that I'm going to come in and I'm going to look at how do we extract more value from this platform? How do we essentially, and again, I'm not planning on growing my team anytime in the near future. So I have to look at how do I solve for a one-person team through technology, but also just through, better training and resources for our hiring managers.
That's awesome. It's really cool to hear about your experience. It's very similar to my own, where it's like, okay, I've got a toe in this area. I think about it like a major and minor. So if like recruiting, full cycle recruitment is our major, like what is our minor?
Yep.
I got to know, what ATS are you implementing?
Yeah, so we're bringing on Ashby. Actually, yeah, we're in the process of that right now. So that's been good. It's always a pretty big lift to change ATSs, but excited to give it a whirl and see how it goes.
Heck yeah! Have you been in Ashby before?
This is my first time actually using it outside of kind of demos and just the playing around in it. So it's game time. We're gonna set everything up to the best we can and see what we can do.
Awesome. Well, this podcast isn't sponsored by Ashby, but it'd be a lot cooler if it was.
Let's get this man a sponsorship.
We will definitely plug you in, and if I could answer like any Ashby questions along the way. I feel like my learning experience in Ashby is daily. The team over there is fantastic. I remember using it when they were in beta, and it was like every day, just like pinging them with a question. They'd be back and forth. And I think that really creates a cool experience for just the relationship between buyers and stakeholders. Yep. I mean, at the end of the day, like millennials and Gen Z, they want to spend money on software that's built by their friends and people they care about. The HR tech market right now and like the ATS CRM space is so loud and flooded. Yeah. It's kind of like a hall of mirrors if you show up at a conference and everybody's just doing the same thing. So it's really nice when a team separates from the pack. And I think at its core, when people are building great technology to solve problems, like we're just not solving the same problems we were 7-8 years ago. And there's some great products from that era. I think about it as like the second wave of hiring, some of the tools that are household names. Mm-hmm. But for me and for other recruiters, like I want to be in the latest and greatest stuff, not too dissimilar to engineers.
Yeah, and I think that's always been a big problem in the HR tech space. We've always been complaining about it, that there's tools being built. Everybody's got the latest and the greatest, but very few of them are tapping actual operators on the shoulder and saying, hey, can you give your thoughts, give your opinions? I've seen more of an influx of that in the last year or two. Maybe it's just me being more prominent on LinkedIn, but I've seen a lot more, early stage tech providers and tool providers reaching out to me and wanting me to try tools out, give some sort of advice and my perspective on it, which, I can't do it as often as I used to as we get busier, but I think it's actually a pretty imperative thing that, recruiters and HR leaders and TA leaders, anybody that has the time and the bandwidth actually contributes to those conversations, because I think we need tools, and I think competition is good. I don't like a market where we have 1 to 2 legacy ATS providers, and that's the thing that everyone wants to use, but it's not actually solving the granular problems that we have. So I think we need to contribute to these conversations if we can, as far as advising these companies on how to build these tools that solve actual real world problems.
The real world problem example that comes to mind for me is like, it's so simple, but it's like the difference between a calendar integration through an API versus a .ics file for an email attachment for scheduling. Like if you want to increase your attendance rate for interviews or mitigate dropped interviews, like don't send ICS files. But being able to provide that type of feedback with vendors and say like, hey, we have this problem. Somebody else has got to be experiencing this problem too. Yeah. Who's solving it for us? Like developer tools, sales and marketing, cloud computing. They have a sea of vendors like running through walls to solve problems for their end users.
Hmm.
And like, I'm just happy to be here, man. It's cool that like recruiting and HR got cool.
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah.
been implementing some HR tech in a company since like 2016 and have had the opportunity to work with bleeding edge technologies. And that's like a privilege thing. Not a lot of folks
Hmm.
that are other recruiters out there can like just at the snap of a finger eliminate a contract and onboard a new tool. So sometimes you just got to like work with paper clips and bubble gum until you move on to the next thing. And
Right.
I've been in those situations too, as I'm sure you have. I mean, I remember scanning PDFs. I remember solving for mobile optimized job applications for in-person jobs for folks that didn't have a digital profile.
Yep.
But it's just an interesting time where people are building cool technology. Um, and maybe even on the sourcing side, like I'd love to hear, like, how do you think about sourcing? Like, what's working for you in this market right now? What are your observations?
Yeah. One quick point on, the I'll call it the ghetto rigged talent acquisition operation, that you mentioned, where you're just piecing things together. I think it's really cool that we're in an era right now where there's a lot of really great technology that's accessible to, from a pricing standpoint, for startups and smaller organizations, right? Historically, it's always been, Breezy HR, Jazz HR, and these are all good platforms. I'm not discrediting them, but those are the options that are typically available to an up and coming startup. We're starting to see more dynamic technology for earlier stage companies, which I think was really great. When it comes to sourcing, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm still having massive success through LinkedIn. Now, again, a lot of this comes down to the type of positions that I'm going after. It's a lot of go-to-market professional positions. From the technology side, we haven't invested a ton or haven't had a need because we haven't done a ton of hiring of engineers and product managers and things like that. But really still getting a lot of value from LinkedIn and really honing in on messaging and just how do we create better open rates, right? And better response rates from in-mails. Excited to try, in our new ATS, the kind of cold sourcing functionality where you can email candidates and, be able to contact them that way. That's going to be a tool that I'm excited to try out and play around with. But yeah, I would say that, right now, as far as direct cold sourcing, LinkedIn is still number one for me. How about you?
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting. You've got a tremendous following and brand equity as a result of the hard work. Like, you don't just show up on LinkedIn and like genuinely make connections with people. You've demonstrated like the playbook for how you show up with authenticity for who you are in real life and how
Mm-hmm.
you show up online. That's not always the case. What I've seen is like in the last probably 6 months, like LinkedIn has really been outperforming email for me. It used to be email.
Mm.
2, 3 years ago, it was just like, okay, let me crank on email. Let me run sequences, campaigns, A B test copy against copy, and just like really crank as an email marketer, which was a lot of fun because like I've had roles where like I was like running an email marketing program for like growth marketing and lifecycle marketing. So that's my wheelhouse. But it's
Yep.
crazy now because it's just like, okay, sweet. Now it's the LinkedIn DM is king. We're seeing all these folks come back to LinkedIn or they're first time LinkedIners or they've been lurking for a bit and now they're ready to like build their personal brand a little bit.
Yeah.
I love it because I'm a content guy. I'm an extroverted guy. I think everybody's got an interesting story to tell.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm surprised every day where it's like, oh, sweet, LinkedIn DMs are working. I'm not even ripping LinkedIn in mails. Like it's just connection
Yeah.
requests, DMs, jumping on a call to complement that email
Yeah.
structure. And doing so in Ashby. Like it's great to be able to do it all from a Chrome extension in one
Mm-hmm.
place. I run just like a Notion CRM for my LinkedIn folks that I'm not able to enrich an email address on. But
Mm.
at this point, it's just like, it's fun. Like if you don't like
Yeah.
sourcing, why are you in recruiting, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm another thing I'm really like getting into again. I say again because with all the tools out there, I think a lot of recruiters have gotten away from Boolean searches, and I'm playing around with running searches through Google and just seeing what results come up and comparing, what LinkedIn profiles come up versus what you get when you run a traditional string search through the platform. So I think some of these like cold, hard, foundational skills that most recruiters were taught to have, I think we've kind of gotten away from it over the last, a lot of people have gotten away from it over the last few years because there just hasn't been a need with all the technology out there. But I'm really excited to kind of see what results even that bears out.
That's an interesting point because I've been talking to a couple of sourcers about this too, and folks that are around our like years of experience where like we had to do a lot of scrappy stuff. We had to leverage like data science and data analyst stakeholders to like create a dashboard like before Looker and before Tableau. And now we've got like beautiful BI built right into our all-in-one ATS system. And it's like, that's awesome. But like,
Yeah.
understanding how we did it before, like it's great for this early generation of recruiters that have got like 2 to 3 years of experience to have this contemporary move really fast. But if you understand how the technology works and if you understand Boolean logic and if you know how to like get upstream if you lose a paddle,
Yeah.
and being able to like A/B test your Boolean strings between different browsers.
Yeah.
Or what happens when a major search engine doesn't cache an X-ray. And I think Q1, there was a lot of hoopla in the sourcing world around like, oh, like LinkedIn changed restrictions. Google's not caching LinkedIn X-rays. And it was like 2 weeks later, you can still X-ray LinkedIn. It just looks a little bit different. And that's in Google versus say Bing.
Yep.
But what you're talking about is curiosity. And I think ultimately, like, yes, it's about quickly moving through the process, getting in somebody's inbox, getting them into a loop and getting them hired before they take an offer elsewhere.
Yep.
But ultimately, if it's like the thrill of the hunt, the process, the sharpening of the sword, if you will, I think that's what's going to make a great recruiter moving forward.
Yeah. And, to your point, you touched on, the skills that we had to develop and we've had to develop as we've, been in the startup space. I think a lot of recruiters are not rec ops people, right? Like they're just not, because they've been taught how to, maybe do kind of the standard recruitment workflows, but all the other things that, like I said earlier, provide a direct impact to the business. I think if you ask the average recruiter, why is a metrics dashboard important? Like, and why is reporting on these metrics so key to the business? Most of them wouldn't be able to tell you, they wouldn't understand why time to hire and cost per hire matter in the long run, So I think this is why I'm always advocating for, you need to be learning. You need to be educating yourself. Not even just for me. Like I've never claimed to be the all-knowing talent acquisition leader. I'm just sharing what I'm learning and what I think is important. I know you are as well. And there's a lot of other great people on LinkedIn and other platforms that have a lot of great things to share. And so you should be looking into resources. You should be learning, try to read, try to listen to podcasts every day, because this is not a space that's static. Like it's, even if the skills are foundational and we use them, in different ways over time, the markets change, the channels change, everything changes. You have to know where your candidates are, your desired candidates are at every given second, and craft your strategies around that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of innovation is cyclical. And if you've been around for a minute, like that's the benefit of being resilient and growing and just getting older is sometimes I'll see stuff and it's like, wait, didn't we do that? And a perfect example would be, I got an email this morning and it was like a marketer talking about an underserved page on a company website being the careers page. And talking about growing brand through having like silly job titles. And this is somebody like today saying like, change your job title to like XYZ. I'll send you the link. But it immediately reminded me of like, didn't we do like ninjas and gurus and wizards in 2011, 2013? Like, there's like just being wrong and appropriation and like not being inclusive for some of these monikers. But it's funny to see that like, some marketer this morning thought like, let's reinvent job titles as a way to reinvent ourselves as a brand.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, and I think I think we've seen it even with some of these these movements, right? Like the what are the silent quitting? What was the other one in 2020 or 2021? The big one. But you see all these movements that they come about in different ways. They have different titles, different names. But if you look back 30, 40 years, I mean, these kind of things have been happening in the job market. It just feels like it's something we have to recreate for ourselves. But yeah, it's super interesting.
You talk about building a brand. How do you leverage your other stakeholders to build their own brands, to be talent magnets, or encourage new hires to maybe captivate the interest of their community? Because obviously, just if you look at the network and the algorithm and how it's built, um, how do you create like those edge points for folks who are curious about experiencing algorithmic growth the way you've captured?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about it internally within the business, I've tried and tested a few different things, all related to learning and educational resources. One of them is I actually hosted a workshop for some folks internally who were interested in learning about LinkedIn as a tool and a mechanism for career growth, and just basically how to increase your following, get more visibility, how to write and talk about things that are interesting to people. I still don't feel like I have that completely figured out, but I have a bit more of a framework now that I follow. I'm sure you do as well. I think just understanding who in your business has an interest, because it's never a lot of people. Like it's always like maybe 3 to 5, maybe depending on the size of the org, it might be more but there's that small subset of people that are like, I want to do what you're doing. I want to build a personal brand. I want to be able to talk about these things. And they see the impact and they see the work that you're putting in. So I think, finding a way to do that. And I think that just comes from having conversations. As a recruiter, in the startup, I get to talk to a lot of different business leaders. I have a pretty good pulse on, the teams, what they're working on. And I'm also running our culture committee here at Worldly. And so really focused on a lot of cultural projects. And so I just have this natural kind of pulse on who's interested in this kind of stuff and who's not. The other thing I like to do is kind of create some of these employer branding assets. Sometimes you have to tee it up for your internal folks, right? Because they're not going to naturally want to share, or they're not going to be inclined to share. So, for our new hires, we've created these new welcome to Worldly assets that we share on LinkedIn, and I partner very closely with marketing. If you're in recruitment and you can have control of employer branding completely, make sure that you're walking side by side with your marketing team, because they have to be in alignment with what you want to do and understand the value of employer branding. And so we try to share that anytime we have new hires, kind of create some buzz. I like to reshare those, and we have our executives reshare them. There's various other resources that we've shared. I tested out a while back, haven't done it in a while, but tested out, these kind of assets that we created for new roles, and just wanted to see how they performed, and how they impacted our inbound application flow. And it was a pretty eye-opening experiment. I mean, we had probably 20,000 plus engagements on 2 posts, and that resulted in like 1,500 more applicants than we typically have through LinkedIn or through our other inbound channels. And so, you just try things and you test things out. But I think recruiting has to lead the way, or at the very least, you need to be at that table involved in the conversation with marketing.
At the end of the day, I'm a big proponent that like the employer brand isn't what a lot of people think the employer brand is. Like brand is how we feel about an
Yep.
interaction or an entity. And you do a really good job of like instilling feeling through your written word, and I'm really excited for your newsletter and like very much going to support that and amplify it, because I think like the art of long form writing is definitely
Yep.
lost.
Mm-hmm.
Or like maybe it's not lost, that's a little divisive, but it's definitely diminished because we're in these short feedback attention cycles from
Yeah.
TikTok or scrolling, and it's like really nice to sit down and just actually read some like cogent long form writing. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited to see more of that. But you raise a good point about the employer brand, and does it sit in marketing? Does it sit in talent acquisition? Where would you have it in an ideal world if you had a dedicated person for employer branding?
I know most recruitment and talent people would say it needs to sit in recruiting. I actually don't mind it sitting in marketing as long as that relationship and that channel is open, and it's a the ability to work hand in hand with marketing is there. I actually think it's more of a joint effort, ideally, but I know that's not how how it tends to work. So I could see it going either way. I think most recruiters would say it would be great to have it under our purview because then we can control what we do. We can control what assets we're putting out, the cadences, all that sort of thing. But I think to your point, I think the biggest impact that we can have on employer brand is get your people talking, get your people engaged on LinkedIn. And it doesn't even have to be about what you're selling, right? Or what the product is. Again, I don't talk much about sustainability. I don't talk much about climate tech and all the things that the brand is focused on. I'm trying to provide value in other ways, but what I have found that it does and what it results in is it creates this natural curiosity. Like, who's this guy? Who's this Andrew guy who's like all over LinkedIn? I see all of his posts.
Yeah.
He doesn't shut up. He's always talking. I want to go check out his profile, right? And then you go and look, and then you're like, oh, what's Worldly? I've never heard of that before. You click, and you're like, oh, that sounds really cool. And I can't tell you how many DMs I get from people that are like, hey, love your content. Really just haven't heard of Worldly before, but checked it out. Would love to stay in touch and learn more. You know what I mean? And that's the value. I mean, to your point,
Yep.
no one is connecting with a logo. People are wanting to hear from the folks inside the company. So I still think that's the biggest opportunity space is how do you get, and maybe you start with just your recruitment team, and if you can get 2 or 3 people from that space engaged and talking and building a bit of a brand, hopefully you could take that and expand that to the people team and then expand it to marketing and expand it to sales and whatever it looks like. I still think that's where the value is.
I agree, and it creates a node effect that I think is kind of missing depending on how you fine tune your algorithm across different business groups. Sometimes I notice like the algo wants to like box me into just recruiting, and it's like, no, I want to talk with marketers. I want to talk with engineering leaders. And I feel like I'm constantly fighting to break into those like algo channels for where my interests also extend to versus just being in an echo chamber. And I think that's one of the consistent feedback points I hear around like somebody who's growing on LinkedIn as a channel is it's challenging to like hit that like schema across different groups. And when you're recruiting full cycle for engineering and go to market and G&A, like that's how you have to think about making sure you're diversifying where you're touching. And of course it's an algorithm and no one has the right answers, but you talk about encouraging people. And it reminds me of like a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, there's like all this stuff in the news. It's like Cisco is turning their employees into influencers. And like, no shade, Cisco, I didn't see a single one. But then it's like you see these companies that come out of nowhere in the B2B SaaS world, and they're just killing it with micro influencers and employees. Like there's this dude, Vin Matano, who is like doing this perfectly for demand base. And he posted today, I think it was, where he was talking about how his personal brand has flywheeled for recruitment. And like, I could only hope that demand base has like a killer referral program to reward its employees. But like ultimately, like that's what people want to hear from. They want to hear from the people doing the work. They want to hear from the team, not just a recruiter, because I think a lot of folks are like disillusioned by like working with a recruiter over the last few years. People have had more transitions. And honestly, like millennials, it's our fault too, because like we sold this whole your work has to be your passion. Do what you love. You'll never work in a day in your life. We influenced comp to high watermark levels. We got people Razor scooters and kombucha on tap. And we sold like the dream.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, where did that get us? And like, how does that make me feel after doing it for years? And like, what are the challenges we're facing today? So I think ultimately it's about curating that employee candidate centered value proposition that is going to look different and go to market on one team. Maybe it's the startup segment versus an enterprise team versus the engineering. And you have these micro cultures that are, again, that node effect. And how do you tell that story online in an authentic way? Because you're right. It's not like the newsfeed is serving up any like B2B SaaS logo in your newsfeed unless you're paying for ads.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you brought up Vin. Him and I don't know each other, but I have seen his content and been following him for a bit. And I think he models this so well. I think the biggest opportunity space that anybody could take advantage of is he just provides insight into what he's doing, right? Now he's a little bit more committed to it than others might be. I mean, he's got video cameras following him around. He's got full production. But the point is, anybody can document what their day looks like. Anybody can document their successes and their wins and the specifics. I know one of his big pieces that he talks about is his journey to being a top seller and to get to President's Club, right? And he literally lists his stats for the week. Like, what other person is doing that? I don't know any. I mean, maybe there's some on there that I don't know about, but like, how cool would it be if you're a recruiter and a talent acquisition professional, invite people into your workday, record yourself, doing calls or talking to candidates. Maybe don't do that, but you get the point I'm trying to make here is like, just invite people in and show them what's working, what's not working. And I think that's the best way to do it. Anybody can do that. That's not some, bleeding edge strategy. This is like pretty basic connection material,
When you think about like those connection points too, and like learning and borrowing tips and tricks, like I've been out here building startups in my basement. I've been coming up for air and doing more conferences, doing more networking. I've got the intentional networking ratio, which is the ratio of folks you connect with per week. LinkedIn gives you 150 a week. How many folks are you actually getting on the phone with? I try to do 2 to 3. Wow. So if you're rocking a 1 to 2% intentional networking percentage, I think you can learn a lot as a recruiter and ultimately make some friends, because it can be isolating being a recruiting team of one, or if you're running your own agency. Are you going to conferences? Are you doing any like speaking this year?
Nothing on the docket as far as speaking. Have a couple podcast episodes coming out, some interviews that I've done. I went to my first conference in 4 years back in April. I went to the SHRM Talent Conference. Was really hoping to go to Unleash as well, but I wasn't able to make both. They were too close to each other, unfortunately, as far as dates. But what's interesting to me, I'd love your take on this as well. I am not the biggest fan of large conferences. I think there's a huge opportunity space for, I'll speak specifically to talent acquisition and recruitment professionals, but I think there's opportunity to create better learning environments for folks, learning and connection. I think I went there and, I have introvert and extrovert tendencies. I can do both. But at the end of the day, I prefer to after I do my thing with people, I prefer to go and just, reset my mind and be by myself for a little bit. And I feel like big conferences are a bit overwhelming. I also feel that the learning and the education piece is a little bit more fast food than like a full course meal, because you're just kind of jumping between session. So, that's another thing I'm really hoping to create out of Talent Operator is more opportunity spaces for better learning and connection. Opportunities for people to actually connect with people and get excited about going to this place where they're going to learn, but they're also going to, follow up with people that they're meeting and they're getting to know.
Yeah, that brings up, there's this guy in my network. I know his name's Elliot Darvik, and he's doing a really good job of curating these like micro connection sessions. And I did one that was going to be like a people and talent leader thing. It was going to be like 6 of us. And there were 4 cancellations. So it was like literally me, Elliot, and another person I met on the internet. And it was so fruitful. I can't even begin to describe it. Like it flywheeled my relationship and connection to both of them completely remote, virtually. And I think ultimately like those learning points come not only from like the headlines and the fast food analogy you described, but by diving in and saying like, hey, here is my pattern matching. What
Yeah.
is yours? And
Mm.
diving in almost from like a case study and say, let's dedicate like 45 minutes and break this work scenario down.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned at the top of the call, like this idea of recruiting being, for lack of a better word, like tribal in terms of the knowledge and the skills and the legacy of what we've created. And I really try to spend my time with folks that have been around and then give back to folks that are new
Yeah.
to it, just so I'm continuing to play my part and also to continue learning that growth. Because ultimately, recruiting is not one size fits all. And sometimes if you go to a conference with like 2,500 people, you're hearing these great things and they could be like very surface level concepts, and you get your selfies
Yeah.
with your friends.
Yep.
You get a meal, maybe a good night's sleep in a hotel.
Yeah.
But I think for me, where I'm at is like challenging myself to pick up the phone, make time in my week for the one-on-one, and then
Mm-hmm.
use like before or after a conference as like the celebratory moment, but making sure that I'm focusing on the relationship too. And I think this is something that sales folks do really well is they
Yeah.
try to get people at the conference off the sales floor, get them to a
Yeah.
private dinner,
Yeah.
get them to something where they can just have more of that intimate conversation around what they're all there to do.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see more of the talent community borrow that. I've seen more like talent community dinners popping up too. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
a bit of a foodie, so I'm always down to go have some food with talent
Something.
folks.
It goes back to our DNA, man. Just our roots, as humans. It's just getting together, um, you know, with a meal and just talking and doing life together. So I think there's a big need for that. The conferences are good; they serve their purpose, but at the end of the day, it feels like it doesn't address deeper learning, opportunities, and it also doesn't, really. It's not really the ideal learning space for a lot of people. If we're being honest, not everybody likes going to conferences, right? Not everybody can afford. If we're thinking about it, if we're thinking about
Mm.
creating spaces that are a little more democratic when it comes to information. Not everybody can go to Unleash, right, and spend thousands of dollars on that ticket. So I don't know. I just think there's opportunity there. I'm excited to explore that. I think it'll be fun, and I think channels like LinkedIn are a great way to have those conversations. And I put up a poll the other day and like, what learning spaces resonate most with you? And it was really interesting to see the results. Not surprisingly, most people do
What
prefer
did people say?
those. Let me pull up the stats here. It wasn't completely unsurprising to me as far as uh, the breakdown of what people said. The majority did say that they prefer the small local meetups and events. So that was 44%. 28% said they prefer free online groups and resources. And 20% said large conferences and events. And then only 8% said that they prefer the paid online cohorts and communities. So pretty interesting. I mean, I think it's
Interesting.
to see where folks like to spend their time.
Well, I'm definitely excited to spend some more time with you, Andrew, and spend some more time in the newsletter. Before we wrap up, like, what if you could like have a magic wand? What would you change about like the current state of talent acquisition right now?
I would change the entry point coming into talent acquisition. To your point earlier, I think the bar has been low, which means that we've had people that have been able to break into talent acquisition, but it also means that the bottom 80%, if we're being if we're being dramatic, maybe the bottom 60% is not at the level they need to be to provide value to the business. And so if I could go back and if I could swipe a wand, I would create a better entry point for talent acquisition folks. And that's not necessarily just like a degree or something of that nature, but more so just training and education to get into the business. I think so many people misdefine or define talent acquisition in the wrong way as far as what skills are important. I think people think, oh, you have to be a social butterfly, you have to be willing to talk to people, you have to be a connector. I do think those things are important, but you also have to be organized. You have to have attention to detail. You have to be a storyteller and a story seller, right? You have to be excited about the brand. You have to be process oriented. You have to also be creative and willing to think outside of the box. You have to know how to sell. And story sell could tie into that, but you have to understand the principles of selling an opportunity to somebody, right? You have to understand influence and how to drive better decision making with your stakeholders. It's not just, okay, let's go through an intake meeting and you tell me what you want me to do. No, it's like actually advising them and guiding them in that conversation and creating those kind of benchmarks for success in that recruitment process. So there's so many things that you and I have learned by just getting knocked down and having to get back up again. And for the right person, you can learn it and you come out better, and you're better for it. But there's a lot of people that just haven't been exposed to that, and so now the market is hitting adversity, it's just a lot more challenging, and there's going to be a lot of people that unfortunately won't recover. They won't be able to develop those skills. So I think for me, I would love to see better learning and educational resources, again tying back to what we said earlier. Just better preparation for what it actually means to be a value adding talent acquisition professional.
It's really interesting. In September of 2022, CNBC posted an article that said the statistics that like the number one job for Gen Zers is corporate recruiter. And I think it's for all the reasons you just described. I think recruiting is a fantastic career path for anybody that wants to flex in all of those areas. And it's a great entry point from a corporate perspective. You can go on and, dive into another area of the business, increase up the org chart as an operator. Recruiting has given me a life like better and bigger than my wildest dreams. Like I never thought I'd be able to do this and love what I do. And I think that's something that I try to remind myself. Not everybody wakes up every day loving what they do. Going through those daily motions. We often think hiring and recruiting is this like big emotional thing, but like, you could probably reverse engineer things within a few points. I love you that you're a data driven guy, but yeah, like show me a process and I can get a pretty close target on predicting what that forecast and model will look like based on the qualitative and quantitative approach. And ultimately, it's about human connection. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to connect with you, Andrew.
Likewise. Yeah, no, this is great. And I think we need more professionals like you. I refer to you in my own mind as the Batman of LinkedIn recruitment, because you came out of nowhere for me. Like I didn't know you existed until like a year and a half ago. And all of a sudden this Brandon guy is just like creating all this really like interesting content, and he's commenting on my stuff, and I'm like, who's this guy? He knows what he's talking about, but I just didn't know who you were until you showed up one day. But we need more people like you, that are sharing helpful, tactical, real world advice for talent acquisition folks. Because you know it. I mean, there's so much noise on places like LinkedIn, and it's all talking about stuff that ultimately just doesn't drive positive change or impact. We're arguing about banners, we're arguing about resume formats, we're arguing about ghosting. And while those things have their place, it's like there's just not enough people talking about stuff that can actually help people, especially those in recruiting and talent acquisition.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate the kind words. I'm right there with you. Like where are the recruiters out there talking about like influencing an engineering manager or engineering director or like the contemporary challenges, and like where's a battle card between 4 ATSs right now, or a battle card between like the 4 folks that just pivoted into free ATS, free CRM. I think there's far more interesting issues that we as a recruiting community can talk about, instead of like pandering to the job seeker or pandering to the anti-work mob to leverage algorithmic growth.
Yeah.
That's one of my stump issues right now, is like, let's not be divisive. Like if we are going to be successful for the future of recruiting, we need to like band together and focus on what matters. And at the end of the day, it's not follower count or engagement. It's human connectivity.
Yeah. It got to be solution minded, and we need recruiters that think that way and operate that way.
Well, thank you for joining me. How can people stay in touch and follow with what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So you should be able to look me up, Andrew L. I think it'll show up as an L, not Lewis, when you look me up. But I'm the head of talent at Worldly, so you can't miss me. You can also follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I operate under the handle of Talent Operator. Same thing on TikTok, and the new newsletter that's coming out. We'll drop the link below for you too. It's going to be the Talent Operator newsletter. So please sign up for that. Offer your feedback. Want to provide as much value as I can in a different setting outside of social.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, it's been a privilege. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Brendan.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning into the Rebel TA podcast. If you're in the HR and talent space and you're looking for an HR conference to attend in 2024, I'm here to tell you that RecFest is the world's largest talent acquisition conference. So check it out. Jamie Leonard and the crew over at RecFest have been putting on this conference in the UK, and they're back in Nashville, Tennessee on September 12th and 13th this year for an incredible 2-day event. It's a beautiful time of year to be in Nashville, connect with other TA friends. I had a blast last year on stage and had a wonderful time connecting with amazing people in the talent space. You've got to be there if you're planning an offsite, if you're trying to get the team together, you're looking for professional development. It is a not miss conference. Tickets are on sale now and moving fast. I'll see you out there. I just booked my hotel and I can't wait to be back in Nashville.